Welcome to Grand Farmer, the podcast where we bring together growers and members of the ag tech community to discuss the latest advancements in technology and their impact on agriculture. My name is Andrew Jason. I'm part of the Grand Farm, and we're honored that we get to host this podcast and explore the ways in which technology is changing the world of agriculture from the perspective of those who are in the fields and in the tractors every day. And today we have a special one that is guest hosted by my friend Felipe Gonzalez with Startup Connections USA. He hosted this live at our Cultivate conference where he interviewed Patrick Walther with AGvisorPRO and Adam Spelhaug, a farmer in North Dakota. And they got into some really fascinating conversations, really revolving around, are people needed on the farm? And not to sound too clickbaity, but the answer may surprise you. And spoiler alert, the answer is yes. So I hope you really enjoyed this episode of Grand Farmer. It was a really fun and interesting conversation to listen into, and enjoy the show.
So I just wanted to really let's just try to have an open conversation. Of course, we have some questions lined up, but I don't want to. Everybody talks about ag tech every time, right?
Yeah.
So it's what's ag. No, I don't care about that. Let's.
Great.
Yeah, we all know about that. We learned about that a lot already. So, okay, we can start. Welcome, Patrick, Adam. Really good to have you guys here. First of all, I wanted to learn a little bit more about you guys. Okay, so maybe Patrick can start. Can you just give a brief introduction of yourself and your company real quick?
Sure, yeah. I currently reside in Canada, but initially I'm from Switzerland. My background is agriculture. Came to Canada to do my master's in on-farm research, looked at different tillage equipments to do that, and always had an entrepreneurial side. Started a business when I was in Switzerland for people in North Dakota. It's funny, I sold pasture-raised goose meat for about $300 a pop. So it was kind of my first step into a business venture. But now I co-founded a company called AGvisorPRO, and we're about 22 people today. So yeah, that's me.
Adam, I know you're a farmer here in the region, but tell us more.
Yeah, so Adam Spelhaug, I farm southwest of Fargo, about half hour by Kindred. Grew up on a family farm there. Row crops, cattle, that kind of thing. We were in a big farm, and graduating from high school in the late 90s, crops prices weren't that great, so I figured I'm probably going to have to get a real job, and went to NDSU and then started working in retail agronomy, and then worked for a seed company for many years as a regional agronomist, seed production, and then last couple of years I've been working for a global soybean licensing genetics company, but still farming on the side. I can't get away from the farm. My dad retired. I took over the farm. Don't have a lot of acres, but it's enough to keep me busy, and pretty light, sandier soils, so it's a little stressful and has some challenges that way too. So trying to incorporate maybe more no-till and looking at some other different crops, cover crops I can start introducing to in the farm to help with some of that.
It's good for you to mention this. How common is farmers to have second jobs?
I think it's pretty common. Like my parents growing up, my mom was a full-time nurse, so really just healthcare alone, in the US versus Canada or other companies, but healthcare is a big thing, that can be $10,000-$12,000 a year for a farm. So my mom having that worked out really well, but my dad was also selling seed on the side, so I mean that's pretty much a secondary job, or having the cattle, there's that kind of diversity. So it's and I know there's a fair amount of people like myself too that are working at a seed company or a agronomy center or precision ag, helping out with John Deere or something, but still farming on the side. Especially a lot of younger, coming out of college, having that first real job, and then maybe going back to the farm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think it's everywhere, right? Like the farmer has to hustle in all spectrums. Patrick, I wanted to understand a little bit more. First, tell me a little bit more about your company, and then I want to just throw another question in. How do you approach the farmer? Adam's saying here, they're doing multiple things. They're working the job in farming. How is that connection that you make the farmer excited about a new technology?
Yeah. So, if we look at where the current environment is for farmers, there's such a pressure on so many things. You got to be a specialist in should I be hedging my grain? You should know what kind of disease is that on my crop. You have employees. You got to figure out like how do you make that they stick around. And we just really feel there's got to be a better way to help farmers out to get them connected with experts. And, if you're living in the middle of nowhere in Saskatchewan or Minnesota, you might not actually know where the best expert is at. And so we really thought what we need to build is a platform that connects farmers, agronomists, the entirety of agriculture together and helps them solve on-farm questions. And that's really what our product is about, AGvisorPRO, our main product. It's a private social network for agriculture. You can ask questions anonymously so that there's this stigma of, I don't want to look down in front of my neighbor, and you get matched with hundreds of experts. So we have about 16 million acres on the platform today, about 8,000 users pretty much everywhere where there's agriculture in North America. We got some users. We're doubling our users about every 3.5 months right now. So it's been a fun ride. And today I'm actually here in Fargo because we're launching a brand new product as well. So I'm excited to talk about that a little bit later too.
And that's actually it was going to be one of my questions maybe.
You can talk about it now because this won't come out till after you launch it, right? So just go ahead and launch it.
Yeah. So I
don't say anything.
I was gonna ask you because we talked a little bit about that, and one of the questions that I was gonna bring up to you guys, to both, is the role of like the human labor, like in the farm, like how technology is gonna change that. Is it changing already? How important it is still to have like human labor? And I know that you're gonna talk a little bit about your product, but when you think about the retailer or the machinery company or whatever, so tell me a little bit first, Adam, about this, and then Patrick, maybe you can talk a little bit about your product and what you're thinking.
For sure.
Yeah, I think, autonomous is a big buzzword. Grand Farm and even at the first couple of Cultivate conferences here, that was a big talking point. And, talking to farmers, it's going to be a need because especially as you get maybe west of here, we have more population in this part of the state, more people to draw from, to help out on the farm or hire. But you get west and I know a guy out in central North Dakota, he farms 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 acres, and it's him and two guys that are in their mid 70s, and he's been offered land. He's like, I can't take on more land because these two guys leave. What am I doing? He said he's pushing thin already. So I think it's going to be a need, more autonomy, just more things like that to help out on that labor shortage issue. But you still talk to farmers, they don't want to leave the combine. They don't want to leave the tractor. They still want to be out there. That's part of the fun part is driving and, spraying yesterday. I like going out there. I see the crop. As an agronomist for the most part too, I'm seeing stuff. I'm seeing things across my ground. I'm planning ahead for next year. What can I do differently, or different zones, things like that. So it's still never going to take the farmer out of the tractor, but I think incorporating more things to help out while you're in there to do other things or that kind of thing, maybe tillage or whatever. Guy doesn't care about doing that, sending that tractor. That's one reason I went to no-till too, because I don't like sitting running a disc forever. But no, I think
there's a lot of recreational tillage still going on in North Dakota.
Yes, and it's bad, and it's with the wind and dryness we had this spring. There can be more that can be minimized on that side for sure.
Can we talk a little about that before we get there? Because this is really important for me to hear, because our practices in Brazil are a lot different, right? I'm Brazilian, and the no-till is like, it's pretty much a standard, I'd say, down there, right? What's the difference here and there? Why is that different?
I think part of it is just culture. It's just something my dad did, my grandpa did. I'm just going to keep doing it. Making that change is hard for farmers. They can't let go. Other things is warming that soil up, drying that soil out, especially in this region where we're cold and wet until the day of planting, so how can I get that warmed up and change? But we've got good soils here. We want to maintain them, and that's what I'm trying to do more. And you hear a lot of no-tillers, and it's all about cover crop, regenerative, and all these buzzword topics. And to me, that's not it. I'm doing it so I can save money on fuel. I can save money on time. I've got a real job, so I can do more time on my real job to help pay for my farming. So the less I have to sit in the tractor seat, that makes me more efficient. I'm not doing it to have some tag name behind my name or something. I don't think a lot of farmers are. I think that's a small segment. That's probably the louder segment, but it's a smaller segment. So,
I think you hit on a very important piece, and you said a lot of farmers do it because my grandfather's done it, and my great-grandfather's done it. And we see this in so many areas in agriculture, and I don't blame them, because you only have 35, 40 chances in your life to make this work. No. Well, so what is out there that can actually give you confidence that if you move into no-till or if you use strip-till, that it's going to work this season, right? And this is really where we saw that need for AGvisorPRO, because you can now get connected with people who've been there, done that, and you're sitting in front of them. You can go into more depth and have conversations. So, it's an interesting point. I think, in agriculture, we have to change in the next 30 years quite a bit still. Mm-hmm. But that human aspect on going through change management and people having confidence in new practices, I think that will take time. So
we talked a little bit about that, right?
Yeah,
last night.
And there's less people going into agriculture that have a farm background. There's being less and less farms, so there's less and less of that background knowledge, going into the industry, which is fine too. I mean, I know lots of good agronomists or people in agriculture that didn't grow up on a farm, got into the industry and do really well. But so that's part of it too.
Yeah.
So no, and I do use AGvisorPRO. I got on it.
Oh, no way.
Early.
That's funny. Okay.
To me, I what I kind of equate it to is there's like Facebook groups for certain things. But this is a little bit more professional, I'd say, of that. You get on Facebook and it's a mess. You guys know, everybody knows that. But this is, to me, it's kind of like those chats or those kind of focus groups. But it's, you're going to get probably a better answer, a more professional type thing. So, and I'm kind of on there as a farmer and kind of as an agronomist. I've answered questions, I've asked questions. So it's playing both hats a lot, which is fun. But
that's so interesting. I mean, we didn't stage this, but you literally just said what we hear of most from our users. They love it because it's a professional network.
Right.
It's about solving problems in ag. I don't need to see someone's cat profile picture on Facebook, right? And you get actually the added benefit on figuring out, okay, why is he answering that question the way he's answering it right now? Because I can look at his work experience, his education. Where does he come from? So, you mentioned earlier around the labor issue, where we see a huge labor issue as well is specifically for equipment dealers. These precision technicians, they are swamped when planting comes around. If you talk with them, they get about 100 to 150 calls a day as individual. And 60 to 80% of these questions are repeaters, like how do I adjust my flow meter? How do I set my A/B line? What's the software version? Are you on a newest software version? And so right now, today, it's a very manual task. What we've done is we ingested operation manuals, technical manuals, and a whole bunch of other data specifically for equipment dealers. And we trained a large language model, an AI kind of database that you can now query. So if you were to say, I have an error fault code 403, it will give you back within 10 seconds, these are the steps you should do. And it will give you where in the manual that is. And so it's a huge kind of time saver for the precision technicians. We're giving it in the hands of them. So when the questions come in, we transcribe these. We suggest what an answer could be. So we generate an answer, and the technician then says, I like that. This is good. And he sends it then out to the grower again. So that's what we're launching here. So it's pretty exciting.
And you told me there's like a bit of it feels human. I mean, because it's a real answer, right?
Yeah,
it's not a computer. Yeah.
Correct. So, as a farmer, you would actually never know that this is happening.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we still have the technician who goes in and approves, this is the answer I want to give, or I want to edit it. And it's really about, this is not to replace the technician by any means, but it's to make the technician more efficient for the questions that actually matter.
Yeah.
And he's not too happy to answer 30 times a day how to set your AB line.
Right. No, that's a good technology, because that's a lot of that, and my dad's run the planter at times for me in the spring, and I'm doing another thing, or I'm running our drill and he's doing the planter, and then it's not working, and so I'm trying to text him, or I was going to be gone for my real job for a couple of days. So I made a video on my phone, how to set the AB line, everything, because I got a different auto steer for a different tractor this spring. So, that'd be good, because like you said, there's not enough of those guys working at the dealerships for John Deere, or RDO has a good agronomy team, our local John Deere dealership in this area, but there's like 6 of them for the southeast corner of North Dakota and Minnesota, South Dakota, and then it's
incredible how tight they are in terms of finding talent.
Yeah.
If you talk with the North American Equipment Dealers Association, NAIDA, they're literally helping their members to find talent to bring in from South Africa, because they cannot find it here, which is just crazy. But today precision, it's crazy. It's like we're driving around computers on our farm. Like, that's the reality. You see a Tesla out there, like, that's old news for agriculture. Like, we have fully self-driving combines who are like adjusting on the go, and like, how should you be setting your sieves, like and so there's just so much around that software piece that really they need help, and that's what we're there.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. I think it'll be really helpful. I totally see that. Let's get back a little bit to technology, and this is always a question that we have as entrepreneurs, as technologists. When we think about technology, Adam, what do you guys really need? What the farmer really needs? Because I know you guys are bombarded with technology, like people trying to figure out drones and satellites and all the sensors in the world. What is the real need for the farmer today, like, that makes you more efficient,
Yeah, I mean, it's easy is always number one, probably. I want something that's going to work. It's going to be reliable. I'm not going to have to change it, and I can learn it. I can do it myself. I would say that something that works across different platforms, that kind of thing. There's a lot of different options out there. I mean, right now I don't have a big farm. I have 3 different auto steers on 3 different tractors. It's like, this is dumb. Why don't I have all the same? So it's the same thing. You're getting the same tractor. But the information they're collecting, can that all be dumped into one area, or zone management, variable rate prescriptions on seeding and fertilizer, and trying to get that easier, I would say, would be big. Because even in the valley here, you look at these fields and it's 300 acres. It's all looks like the same soil type and everything different, but I've looked at a lot of yield maps. I've never seen one that's solid green. There's still variability out there. So a lot of those guys maybe haven't adapted as much as you get in central North Dakota, western North Dakota. You got hills and valleys and different soil types and around sloughs and salt spots. I would say that's probably the biggest thing that, I've seen the information. Variable rate seeding is probably on, half the guys are using it. Variable rate fertilizer is really low, like 20%, and you could probably make more money with that. How we can
especially now,
adopt more of that coming in. Yeah, and with the price of fertilizer, I mean, it came back a little bit this year, but still not cheap. Yeah. So it went from really high to just high. So how can we be better?
Yeah. I think.
I wanted to hear from you as well. Like, what is your perspective?
I'm gonna pump the tires of Grand Farm here. We just had to walk out of a session right now for recording this podcast, but the session was about that Grand Farm done a bunch of studies with grower kind of member groups, pain points, and they wrote up a magazine on what are their pain points. And I think that's just so important. Like at the end of the day, we need to listen to growers on what they feel like is a pain. They made the example of like, why can I not swivel it around 180 in a tractor? I've been thinking about this for so long. Why could you not? Like I was in a tractor myself, and like for after 10 hours, I'm like cranked up in my neck and I can't turn anymore. It's like, who's not thinking about this? Yeah. But for us to, we've always recognized that we have like a grower advisory board, so we bring in farmers. We do all of our user interviews only with actual users, with agronomists, with farmers. About 20% of our investment comes from actual farmers, which again was just like a testament to prove for ourselves, like, are we on the right track?
Yeah, I think that having farmer feedback is critical, because farmers will definitely tell you if it's crap or if it's good. I mean, they will give you an honest answer. So, I think I've seen a lot of that where some company's developing something and they spend all this money and all this time and they bring it forward and the farmer goes, no, I don't want that. Yeah. Or that's not going to work. It's having farmers involved is huge.
We're hitting on a really interesting spot though. I think, there's a dilemma as a startup that I need to be able to work with a grower to actually come to the point where I have a product that is the right thing for him. Now, there's a lot of growers who are apprehensive, who say, I can't spend my time with you, or I can't afford to trial this out, which again, I very much understand. No. So I think, initiatives like the Grand Farm, where you try it on smaller farms, is a very interesting one. I also been advocating in Canada for a very long time. I think that's where actually the government should step in. Imagine you could bring together some of the most kind of progressive farmers. You mentioned variable rate. Like, there should be a way for you to work with a young startup to say, hey, I'm going to trial your new product out, but you're going to get paid by the government, by a grant, who's going to recognize that you're taking on risk. No. I think that would be the fastest way on getting new technology adopted in agriculture. And I don't see many other ways apart from do on-a-farm research.
No. And I think there's a lot of farmers that like doing that, but it's probably hard to find them. So that's where Grand Farm is good, is making some of those connections. Some company comes to Grand Farm and they go, okay, I know these two guys that have these issues, are already working with us, or they like trying stuff on their farm or playing with things, and here's their number, give them a call, or like you mentioned. So making those connections is the biggest point.
Yeah, I mean, that was my previous life. Why I came to Canada, I did on-farm research, so I was fortunate enough to work with all these amazing growers who are very cutting edge. So
And is normally the barrier cost, or it's too ahead of your time, or it's
time.
Just hard time?
Yeah, I'd say that's the far, especially I mean I always say that, especially up here, but I think even guys in Texas, they're still crunched for when they're planting. We're all planting when it's cool out, but they're planting in February and we're planting in May. Mm-hmm. But it's still kind of the same crunch. Hey, I got to get this crop in. There's rain coming, and I going back to my seed industry, and I had trials with farmers, or hey, I want you to try these two different hybrids, or these two varieties, the split planter, and comes to the day of planting, he's like, no, I don't have time. I'm just going to load it all up and go. So it's that's just part of the industry.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's absolutely, time is one of those factors that.
So thinking a little bit. As a Brazilian, you are from Switzerland, right? I wanted to understand a little bit the international piece. How do you think, are there real benchmarks all around the world? Is it industry local, or like, how do you see that? When you're building a tool, are you thinking globally? When you're using a tool, you really want something that works obviously locally, but you see that are opportunities in other places around the world. I wanted to understand a little bit, because I see a lot of companies coming from Brazil, a lot of companies from the US going to Brazil, and it's always a struggle, obviously, to get into the market. So how do you feel by being from Switzerland and building a completely new tool? Is it usable in other countries? How do you feel that the market would accept it?
So I think we're quite uniquely positioned in that as a company, because we're solving problems in so many different areas. It's not just like one tool that is being used to measure soil moisture at this time of the season, or you can only use it at that time. We see usage change from transition planning to when there's planting season is all questions about planting, spraying, all of that, to then towards the end of the seasons more questions around hedging grain and selling and all those kind of things. So, but to come back to your question, we see this problem as a global problem. I was fortunate enough to grow up in Switzerland, travel in Australia. Every farmer I've met so far has the same issue. Mm-hmm. In Brazil, farms are set up a little bit differently. They're huge corporations comparatively to the US, but it's still, at the end of the day, there's so much knowledge to be gained. If we can connect someone in New Zealand who has dairy cows with people in Wisconsin who have dairy cows, they're to some extent have similar problems. Yes, there will be in different kind of geographical areas, but they can still learn from each other. And so we see this actually happening already organically today on our platform. We have huge interest from Pakistan, Dubai, the Emirates, Nigeria. We have a community about hogs in Costa Rica. It's from all over the place. South America, obviously, as well. From our perspective, obviously, the big thing is we just need to make sure that we can set it up so that the users who want to see other content get to see other content, and the users who only want to see local things don't necessarily do that. And how do you do it with language, all of that. So, but it's definitely a global opportunity for us.
Interesting. And as a Brazilian, I hear a lot that there's a lot of rivalry between Brazilian farmers and American farmers. Is that a thing?
Well, I mean, there's rivalry between neighboring farmers in the U.S. We're all in the same industry, but we're all competitors for each other. Right. I mean, there's only so much land, and there's getting to be less land, and it's, I want to grow my farm, so how can I pick up this land? But that's taken away from that farmer, and as a U.S. farmer, I want to sell more beans to China, but Brazil's selling more beans to China, or just at different times. So it's one of those things where we're shaking hands, we're buddies, but we're also competitors. That's just the way farming is, but I think that competitive drive helps advance things too. So that's a big part of it. So I think international. Like I said, before I worked for a company based out of Argentina, an international company. So seeing what they're doing down there and their business there, as well as in Brazil and other countries in South America, how we can take some of those different technologies, those kind of things, and incorporate them here in the U.S. and vice versa. Yeah, there's a lot of U.S. technology across the world now too. So I think it's still the global feedback or global input is still huge for everybody.
Do you believe there's space for collaboration?
To
learn and try to figure out maybe new technologies, like I mentioned before.
Yeah, I still think there's always that side of it. Yeah.
And I think when you look, coming back to no-till, you look globally at that. There's actually huge opportunities if you look in African agriculture. Yeah. And how can we help them leapfrog into the next level of agriculture, what North America and South America has gone through the next years, so that we can produce more food there, better nutritious food as well. So I think there's cool opportunities for sure.
Yeah, it's the challenge that the Grand Farm brings up every day is feeding the world, right? I think there's a lot of opportunities there, and we sometimes need to stick together.
I think feeding the world is one aspect of that, but the other thing is we need to do this also in a sustainable fashion, whatever that means for everybody. But I think we all understand. A grower at the end of the day, he has the interest of making the best for his land.
Right.
That's sustainability at its core.
Yeah, I don't think growers go into it going, I'm going to waste fertilizer. I want my nitrogen running off. I mean, I'm $800 a ton urea. I want that running off my field into the rivers to hurt some city. You know, no farmer's thinking that. They're trying to be as efficient as they can. Or I want my dirt blowing. You know, I want to lose topsoil. Nobody's thinking that. Correct. So it's...
But I mean, we've also come a long way, right? Like you think about the dirty 60s.
Yeah.
Like we come there. And so
and that's just education.
Exactly. I asked myself, what is that next step that we're doing? You know, it's funny you mentioned about like that big, goal, audacious goal of we need to feed the world. And I remember I was actually close to giving up agriculture for a while because I got frustrated. Because most of my friends are coming from the consumer side, and I would talk to them, and I always have to explain, like, no, it's not as the way you're putting it.
I'm not trying to kill you.
Yeah, and it's like, it's gray. It's not black and white. It's not pro-organic, anti-organic. It's like the reality is somewhere in between. Yep. And then on the other side, I would talk to farmers, and they would like just say, I don't understand the consumer, all of that. And so I was kind of challenged on, do I want to actually bridge that gap in my life? But what I realized, and someone challenged me on this and said, like, what industry do you think is going to be the most important in the next 35 years? And it's agriculture. Like in 2050, projections show population will basically slowly stabilize. Mm-hmm. So in the next 35 years, we have huge challenges to overcome.
Yeah, we have more labor issues coming too, because
exactly,
I see lots of that data showing, you know, the U.S. is sitting okay, but other countries, China, Russia for sure, you know, their younger population just isn't there. Yeah. You know, the people aren't there anymore. I mean, people are having less children, and I mean, so it's gonna be, it'll be interesting.
For sure.
But people have to eat, so.
Exciting futures ahead.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close. I know that we have a little bit of a time cap here, so I wanted to ask two more things. One is, I'm sure you, Adam, is a little bit more of an innovator, maybe early adopter, right? What would you tell all the farmers that are listening to us here? What are the tips? How would you tell them, like, how can you be more acceptance to technology, or what would be a message that you pass through when relates to technology to these?
Yeah. I mean, I think part of that is take that time, you know, do those things. There's a lot of things you can set up ahead of time in the winter when it's quieter, that kind of thing. But make sure you are trying new things, doing, you know, and it doesn't have to be big either. It can be 20 acres, or it can be 5 acres on a field, or split something, you know, just try to change what you're doing now. To some point, something's going to hit, something's going to click, something's going to make sense. And then, you know, reaching out and getting help from others. That's another thing. I think a lot of farmers are pretty humble and pretty prideful and don't like asking for help. And I think that's huge. You have to do that with the size and the amount of things farmers have on their plates now. They need help from other people and maybe it's other farmers or agronomists or AGvisorPRO or reaching out, you know, there's those kind of things. Just how they can implement some new strategies on their farm.
Cool. Your perspective now for the new entrepreneurs that are coming in, what do you think they can adopt? Yeah,
I think to Adam's point, at the end of the day, it really matters whether you solve a problem for the grower. And so, you know, spend the time on trying to find the right growers, to talk to them. It's tough to find them sometimes, but I think that's very worthwhile. I also like to see more collaboration in the industry, that like we can just bring things together and talk less about like whose garden is whose. It's kind of saying we have in German, but you know, there's large organizations who have access to a lot of growers, and so how can they help us to bring in new technologies and kind of push that forward? So I think there's, as always, a bit of change management need to happen. So
I'm a really big fan of the word collaboration as well. I always tell everybody, let's grow the pie as much as we can, then we'll split it up, right? So whenever we work together, we get that. So I really agree with you. And just a message. What do you expect of Cultivate? I mean, I know that we are in the future now, right? But what do you think Grand Farm can do for you? How do you think Grand Farm is going to be helpful in the ag space for both of you? You can start, Adam.
Yeah, I think Grand Farm is kind of that collaboration kind of space. So bringing farmers together, or bringing industry, or now with having the Grand Farm facility west of Fargo here, having an area to kind of play in, kind of a sandbox, if you will. Just here's a 2-acre block that you can utilize to try some of your technologies, kind of proof of concept, bring some farmers in. They can look at it, pick it apart, tell you what you did right, what you did wrong. Or maybe it is going out and Grand Farm's connecting a company with a farmer so he can try it out on his own field. He can do an 80-acre block of some new technology or some new planter add-on or something that way. So I think that's, going back to that collaboration point, I think that's just making it easier for companies and farmers to come together so they are developing the right technology and then coming into it. So
awesome. For you, how?
I absolutely agree. I mean, I love what Grand Farm is all about, and kind of like the emerging Prairie ecosystem. I think it's incredible. I guess I would only say I think we need more of those types of initiatives because it will really depend on, what you do here might not work in southern Texas or in northern Saskatchewan. There's definitely initiatives in Canada like that too. It's called the Canadian Smart Farm Initiatives. There's one in Manitoba called Emily. There's one in Olds in Alberta. So I think those types of things are the right way to go. It's really, how do we bring in the grower who tells us the feedback and then actually is willing to adopt it on his farm too. So yeah, it's exciting.
Awesome, guys. Well,
good.
Thanks a lot for being here. And well, let's get back to the show.
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
And that will wrap up this month's episode of Grand Farmer. We really want to thank our special guest hosts, Felipe, and our guests, Patrick and Adam, for this fascinating conversation. We also want to thank Grand Farm and all of our partners who help make this possible. It really takes a full ecosystem to get this done. If you enjoy Grand Farmer, I would encourage you to check out the Grand Farm at grandfarm.com, and a special invitation to our Autonomous Nation Conference on August 29th. This is a conference meant to bring together the autonomous industry, policymakers, and farmers to really advance autonomy in our region and beyond. We're partnering with Microsoft, so it'll be at Microsoft Fargo's campus, and then we'll be going out to our campus in Castleton, North Dakota, for some really cool and fascinating demonstrations. I hope you can join us. Thanks, and we'll see you next time on Grand Farmer.